VR as a medium really aims to immerse the player in a new world, something that they feel is real. Although some graphics don't necessarily vibe with the realism perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that the world itself is not believable. There are games out there that you can feel immersed in even with cartoonish graphics. However, I'm not necessarily going to harp on graphics today. Something that I really want to talk about and I really feel as though should be studied within VR as a medium is hands. Yes, stay with me. I understand that hands may be a very weird topic to really focus in on when it comes to VR. Obviously, we are continually getting games that aren't necessarily up to par in the graphics department, but I feel like hands are even more important than graphics when it comes to virtual reality. There's so many things that you do with them, and in our everyday lives, we have hands. But hands are so integrated into our lives that it would feel weird if they did not act the way that you expected them. Visuals are some of the most important indicators to our brains as humans on how something works or the state that it is in. I'm Butters with an O, and I want to discover what really makes hands in virtual reality believable. One of the five human senses is touch, and that is a very important part of our hands when it comes to virtual reality. The first type of interaction that I want to talk about that pertains to touching is vibration. This is used in many different ways that combine to both notify and give a sense of tactile feedback to your player. Whether that's interacting with a button that you have to push in or grabbing something off of a shelf, these vibrations let you know that you're going to be interacting with that object and you're going to be able to control that object. One of the best ways that I've seen vibration be used to heighten immersion is an indication that you're able to grab something that's not directly in your line of sight. For example, Into the Radius will have the controller vibrate whenever you're grabbing anything off your body. So if you're going for your pistol or your rifle on your back, obviously you're not really able to see that, or maybe you have a sight line on an enemy and you don't want to look away, you are going to be able to confidently grab that sidearm or that rifle because the vibration is giving you that feedback that you're actually grabbing the object that you're going for. There are a lot of games that will have objects around the world that may seem like you can interact with them, but you can't. Implementing vibration on touch is a great way to inform a player that they can essentially move on from this location. A lot comes down to the paint can, if you will, or the white paint, yellow paint argument. If there's no vibration on an object, that's gonna let your player know that they can't touch it. You don't necessarily need to put bright white paint or yellow paint on something if these systems are set up correctly, and you kind of show that in the beginning of the game. Remember, this is also adding that tactile level of immersion for the player, especially if you're using different strength of vibrations for different objects, whether that be a piece of wood or a piece of metal. A lot of different objects can have a lot of different surfaces and material, and being able to use different strengths of vibrations for different types of equipment and objects just offers a much more heightened experience for your player in that virtual reality experience. Sight is another human sense that we use every day. This obviously is going to play a role in virtual reality. You have to have your eyeballs in a headset and be able to see what's going on in front of you. But the big thing here that comes into play is animations. And there's two reasons to have animations. One, it's going to be indicative to what your player can interact with. And two, it adds a level of immersion for that player. Previously, I mentioned the bright white or yellow paint example as a requirement being on some services to kind of help a player understand that they can climb this spot or break this item. I'm not saying that it's always a bad thing to do that by any means, What I'm saying is that there are ways that the VR developers can offer indications through visuals, and these are going to play a role in immersion for the player. For example, in Half-Life Alyx, if you're just walking around doing whatever, your hands are in one animation state. They're kind of open. But whenever you start reaching for an object, the closer you get to that object before you grab it, you're going to see a visual state change on your hand until you actually grab that object. And then as soon as you grab that object, if you have accurate grip position, which is the second part of animation, that's going to immerse your player even more. And I think that's what really plays a role in people praising Half-Life Alyx. You can grab an object from multiple different locations and have that accurately be portrayed with a new animation for the grip style. I will say, however, for anybody that wants to think, oh, well, this game doesn't need it, that game doesn't have it, it must be bad. No, not every game needs to necessarily have multiple grip states and multiple grip locations. However, if you have a game that is going to be very interactive with its world, I would strongly recommend having accurate grip states. This is especially important for games that use firearms, as you wouldn't want your player to feel as though they are grabbing something and it just doesn't feel right in their hand, especially when it comes to controller positioning and how the pointer or axes is set up. But that's a whole different video in and of itself. Accurate grip location kind of leads to our next topic, which is magnetism. And when I talk about magnetism in this case, I'm talking about interaction that refers to the distance at which your hand can actually grab that object. This isn't to be confused with distance grabbing like you would in games like Into the Radius or Half-Life Alyx. This mechanic can either help or hurt the player's immersion when it comes to the distance at which your hands will actually grab an object. In some instances, the magnetism can just be way too strong. Alien Rogue Incursion, a game that I reviewed recently, and you can click up here in the top right if you want to watch that, was one of those games that made it just way too strong. There were times that I would attempt to grab an object that was next to another, or interact with a box that had an object in it, and I would just continually grab the box and not be able to grab the actual object in that box. I'm not saying that this is going to be an issue every single time, but if I wanted to have my revolver out to defend myself while trying to get something out of a box, but my hand keeps grabbing the box, that's going to cause a little bit of an annoyance to your player. So keep in mind whenever you're kind of putting this in that forgiveness is okay, but you don't want it to be so strong that it hurts the player's experience for what they're actually trying to do. This mechanic also plays a role in animations. Depending upon how strong you make that magnetism, there's a chance that your hand will have a big visual discrepancy in-game versus the real world. I think the only time a player will really notice this more bigger visual difference is going to be in a high interaction with your hands type game. Something that will have you inevitably pushing buttons, turning knobs, so on and so forth. The one time that it won't really matter, and I think actually it's better to be more forgiving with your player, would be a shooter game or a PvP game. Most of the time, a lot of the players are kind of more focused on other people rather than these small details, but combining magnetism with vibration would actually make it easier for your player to not have to look away. And even if they're 2 to 4 inches off target from grabbing that grenade off of their vest, they'll still be able to grab it with confidence, knowing that both the vibration is assisting them, as well as that magnetism kind of forcing their hand to move those extra 2 to 4 inches to actually grab that grenade and be able to pull that pin. And I think there's a use case in every scenario for this, but when it comes to single player experiences, I would recommend try to hesitate on how much magnetism you really put in the game. These really are just a few reasons why hands can either be make or break in a lot of these VR experiences, as well as the smaller detail that really adds and heightens immersion over other experiences that lack features such as magnetism, minute animation, vibration with interaction. All of these together are probably one of the higher up levels of immersion when it comes to tricking the human brain into believing that they are in this world. I want to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel, as well as if you want to go a little bit further, consider becoming a member of the channel and making it so that I can do these little more nuanced deep dives onto mechanics within virtual reality. My name's Butters with an O, and I want to thank you for allowing me to make my reality part of your virtual reality. See you next time.